The Night of Sicilian Vespers. How the death of Salvatore Maranzano and the rise of Lucky Luciano in the Castellamarese War was a turning point for the American Mafia. Will Welchel. In the late 1800s, Italians immigrated to America in large numbers, and by 1910 there were 500,000 Italian Americans in New York City alone. Naturally, gangs were formed, and similar ethnicities seemed to be drawn together. These gangs included Italians, along with others, but were unorganized and made money off of small-time rackets like gambling, prostitution, and protection rackets. On January 16, 1919, the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, and then the Volstead Act was passed, prohibiting the sale, production, or transportation of intoxicating liquor. This amendment started the Prohibition era, and it opened a new window of opportunity for gangs, especially in big cities like New York City and Chicago. The Italian gangs, led by Johnny the Fox Torero in Chicago, started to take over the business of bootlegging illegal liquor. This business made them rich and broadened their capabilities, making them skilled in smuggling, bribery, and money laundering. At the same time, many Italians were still fleeing from Mussolini's fascist Italy to America, where many were recruited as muscle for the young Italian American Mafia. They brought some traits of the Sicilian Mafia with them to America, like the omerta, a code of conduct that prevents the Mafia from working with the government. There are many factions of the Italian Mafia, but two of the largest were in New York City and Chicago. Many famous mobsters came out of Chicago, including Johnny the Fox Torero's right-hand man, Al Capone. In the early 1920s, the Mafia in New York was controlled by Giuseppe Masseria, better known as Joe the Boss Masseria. He had lots of young Sicilians working for him, including Charles Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Albert Anastasia, Willie Moretti, Vito Genovese, Alfred Moneo, and Joe Adonis. As the American Mafia began to make millions of dollars on illegal alcohol sales, the Sicilian Mafia back in Italy got jealous. A powerful Mafia don named Don Vito Ferro in Sicily wanted a piece of the action in America and sent Salvatore Maranzano to claim it for Castellammare del Golfo. He began the Castellamarese War, which was a turning point in the history of the Mafia because not only would over 500 gangsters die in battles between Italian gangsters from Italy and America, but the structure of the American Mafia would never be the same. April 13th, 1931. Joe the Boss Masseria is dead at a card table in the Nuova Via Tammaro on Coney Island with bullets in his head, back, and chest. The rival Mafia leader and Masseria's adversary in the Castellamarese War, Salvatore Maranzano, is now the undisputed leader of the entire New York Mafia. Maranzano had made a secret deal with Charles Lucky Luciano, a well-known gangster and top aide in Masseria's organization who had been working with Maranzano secretly for some time. Maranzano ordered Luciano to arrange the death of Masseria in exchange for a place at Maranzano's side. Maranzano organized the Italian American Mafias in New York City into 5 families: the Lucchese family, led by Tommy Gagliano, the Genovese family, led by Lucky Luciano, the Gambino family, led by Vincent Mangano, the Colombo family, led by Joe Profesi, and the Bonanno family, led by Salvatore Maranzano himself. Each family had a boss, underboss, capos, and soldiers. Families would often have associates, people not directly involved in the Mafia, but possibly owed favors or debts, or knew someone involved. Regardless, all associates had to be full-blooded Italian Americans. Not long after the creation of the 5 families, Maranzano declared himself Capo di tutti capi, which means boss of all bosses, at a meeting of crime families in Wappingers Falls, New York. Maranzano modeled his Mafia empire after the Roman Empire. Maranzano referenced the Roman Empire so much that when he was still living in Sicily, he was known as Little Caesar. But similarly to Julius Caesar, Maranzano was greedy. With his new power, Maranzano reformed the other families' rackets to favor his own. He was also too attached to the old ways, and treated his subordinates without respect or dignity, which did not sit well with many of the 5 families' bosses, including Luciano. He thought they should not limit the expansion of the 5 families to Italian Americans only, but also include other ethnicities, like the Jewish Mafia. It took Maranzano a few months to realize the threat Luciano posed to him, but by September 1931, Maranzano knew it was time to get rid of him for good. Maranzano hired the Irish gangster Vincent Cull to kill Lucky Luciano. Unfortunately for Maranzano, Luciano knew Maranzano wanted him dead and figured he would have to strike first. On September 10th, Maranzano sent for Luciano to come to his office in the New York Central Building. Instead of going himself, Luciano sent 4 Jewish gangsters disguised as government agents. 2 gangsters disarmed the guards, and the other 2 proceeded to Maranzano and stabbed him several times before finishing him with a bullet. This night of two-way betrayal and the murder at the hands of one's least and most trusted was named the Night of Sicilian Vespers. In the end, everyone got their revenge, but only one could win. After Maranzano's death, Luciano became the leading crime boss in the United States, and with his power, he abolished the title Capo di Tutti Capi. He believed the title attracted challengers, so he figured without it, no one would challenge him. While Luciano disagreed with many of Maranzano's ideas, he did not change all of his procedures. Some were kept in place, like the omerta and the 5 families. In 1931, Luciano held a conference in Chicago with many bosses where he proposed a commission. It would be composed of the heads of the 5 families who would vote on decisions that needed to be made for the whole mafia, and it would act as a government for the Italian Mafia, which would settle disputes and decide who controlled what territories. This is described as his 9th Symphony, his Sistine Chapel. This was Luciano's great work, the work that lasted for years and years to come, the work that he's remembered for. This was a turning point in the history of the Mafia.